Moms who know do less so they can focus on what matters most, taking care of themselves, their families, and living their God-given purpose. Moms who know focus on the little things they can do that grow to have a huge impact. You are connecting with your family, your true self, and your God-given purpose. You are a mom who knows. Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen, and I'm joined today by Jenny Layton. Jenny, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Chanel. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I was telling Jenny before the show, I have been a fan for a long time and have watched her. And long before I ever got into, podcasts, this whole podcast world or internet marketing and that kind of thing, and just have watched her do it with such grace and style. And she is an expert on organizing. I've known her since, for many years. She is the happy gal, which I think is so fun. And she just is so cheerful and happy and really exudes that. And I think a lot of that comes from the way that she kind of has it put together in her life. And that is what we want to learn from her today. So to start off with, Jenny, let's talk a little bit about your story and why you got interested in organizing and clearing clutter and all the things that you do.
Okay, well, I love the way you just positioned that because you are absolutely right. There is such a clear connection for me in being happy and living a life that I love and feel good about and feeling like I'm not bogged down, with all that clutter and chaos and can't find what you need. Those are just two separate ways of living. And so I think one of the reasons I say that I'm naturally organized because I think I always have really been able to organize things, but I think it's because I just enjoy so much having life be easy and being able to accomplish things and do the things I want. And you just can't do that when you're scrambling all the time. So I love being organized. I realized that I wanted to teach other people how to be organized. This is kind of funny. I had been married probably about 10 years, and we were doing some remodeling in our house, and everything was just chaos in our main living area. I had this big kitchen island, and it was just covered with drop cloths and paint buckets and samples, and kids would bring their backpacks in and drop them down. And everything came to a halt for me in that week or so that we were painting the kitchen and had that remodeling project happen. And I couldn't cook. I couldn't help with homework. I couldn't get things done during the day. Like that clutter and that chaos really immobilized me. And we got through the project, cleaned everything up. I got back on track. And I just realized, wow, we need to be able to together figure out how to function, how to get through daily life, how to keep the clutter clear so that we can really be our best selves. And so that was when I decided to certify as a professional organizer and did that about 15 years ago. And since then have really taken on kind of this coaching role where I help women get organized, but I also really understand the mindset piece behind making change. And so I bring those two pieces together to help coach them and know how to overcome perfectionism and recognize those limiting thoughts and give them a system and then troubleshoot and watch for the disconnects. So hopefully to your listeners today, there's some hope that if you haven't been organized before, I'm so excited that we've met. If you don't consider yourself an organized person, because I have just had such great success with helping people know how to troubleshoot and get to the place where it's disconnected and being able to make those tweaks and changes so that they are feeling, sometimes for the first time, really on top of things. And it's very liberating, very, very rewarding.
I can imagine that it would be like that. It would make you feel, it does. And, we have a house cleaner that comes in every other week. And that feeling when she goes and the house is clean, I just feel on top of the world, everything is good, you just feel so good when things are clean and taken care of. And we won't get into the scramble that happens before she comes to clean the house, because
Right.
that's a whole other story. And that is like the total opposite end of that. But before we get into this more, I really want to, you touched on a professional training that you did to become a professional organizer. What does it look like to get certified, and what kind of things do they teach you in a program like that?
Well, I was really fortunate because I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and there was someone local, Marla D, that was certifying professional organizers, and she has a phenomenal program. It was a 5-day training to start with, and I did further training with her after that. So I didn't have to travel, but really at the time, about 15 years ago, there weren't a lot of places to certify. Of course, it's not a college degree. And so I just went to her certification course, and she taught me business basics and, of course, organizing strategies, paper organization. I mean, just containers helped. We did hands-on projects. I worked with her for quite a while after that. And so that's kind of how it went, how I got started doing a lot of hands-on consulting. And, of course, we've just branched off from there into doing a lot of online and consulting and teaching courses and things.
Now, as you've gone on in the time since being certified to now, do you stick with a lot of the principles you learned from her, or is it a lot of things that you've learned since, on the ground as you're actually organizing?
Yeah, she gave me a really great foundation. I have such a love for Marla and everything that she taught me. As I created my own business and really branded it, I had to kind of come up with some of my own systems. And so that was a springboard for me to come up with some of the things that I teach now. But a lot of it, I just have to say, is working with clients and learning the process of change on my own in different areas of my life, where those coaching techniques have come in that really have kind of weaved together the fabric of what it is that I bring to clients. So yeah, good springboard, but then a lot of real life experience to add to it.
Okay, and that definitely makes sense. Now, a lot of my listeners are young moms, and they have young kids in the home. And with young kids come a lot of messes. Mm-hmm. And I know this from firsthand experience also. So, you are constantly just picking things up, and it can be really hard to ever feel organized. So can we start there? What are some solutions for us to start to feel like we have an organized home?
Yeah, definitely. And first of all, just a shout out to all you young moms that are listening to this and feeling like you'll never get back on top of things, or that you're constantly picking up after kids. It is such a challenging time of life. And I just want you to know, I always just said when I was in that stage, this is my ticket to heaven right here, just surviving this. I know, you can't live more selflessly than when you have little kids, and there's such a joy, but it does, as we were talking earlier, tangible clutter, just that stuff laying around, really translates to internal clutter. And so it is important, even though you're in that stage of life, to not throw in the towel and not feel like, well, this is just what it looks like. Things are a mess and a disaster. You really need to keep in mind your well-being and consider that as you create an environment that feels peaceful, it is going to translate to you feeling better as a person and being a better parent, being more fulfilled in your life. So then we come back to your question then, Chanel, of, okay, so how do we do that? And I want to offer just 2 or 3 quick solutions. I think the first thing is to recognize what your clutter tolerance is. This is a really interesting concept, and it varies from person to person. Some that are listening probably have a higher clutter tolerance than maybe their mom did, or that their sister does, or their friend does, meaning they can function and perform with clutter on the counters and maybe some loads of laundry that still need to be folded, and it doesn't nag at them. And if that's you, the thing I want to tell you is you just need to recognize where you're at on that spectrum of how much clutter you can tolerate and be okay with it. Sometimes I think we give ourselves a lot of grief about that our house doesn't look as good as so-and-so's, or we don't keep up on things as well as so-and-so. But you just have kind of your own personal standard of where things need to be. So recognize what that is and then keep it to that standard. If you happen to be someone that can't tolerate a lot of clutter, I'm one that I just surface clutter on my counters and in the house, on the floor. It just distracts me and I really am unproductive. So I think it's just been really valuable for me to recognize that's how I am. And that's why I keep things really picked up at my house. And I have strategies and routines to help me do that. And I'll share a few of those in just a minute. But I want to talk to you moms also that feel like, your house maybe isn't as clean, but maybe you're okay with that. Don't give yourself such a hard time about that. Give yourself a free pass and recognize we all have these different clutter tolerances and be okay with that. And I hope that helps a listener somewhere. Just take a deep breath and just say, oh, that's why my house looks maybe a little different than someone else's. And a professional organizer gave me permission to do that. Now, I'm not giving permission to just say, just throw in the towel and don't worry, because you know where that line is. And I think what we're all trying to decide is, when we know kind of what that standard is that we want to keep our house to, how do we execute and keep it at that point? And so that's the next piece that I want to address, is a concept that I teach. I have a Get Organized boot camp. It is phenomenal for women to manage their daily life and keep their homes clean. One of the foundational principles I teach in the Get Organized boot camp is a concept called home base. What that means is we all have a main area of our home that feels really important to us that we keep clean. And Chanel, I bet you can relate to this. I bet you are already even picturing, when this one spot or this area in your home is clean, you can function pretty well. But if that is cluttered, maybe it's the kitchen sink and all the dishes, maybe it's the entryway when you walk in, you just kind of know where that bare minimum is that you need to have clean. It's like the barometer for your home. When it's clean, right, you feel pretty good. When it's not, you don't. So yes. You're connecting with that?
Yes, definitely.
Where is yours, by the way, Chanel?
So we have a great room. It's our family room and kitchen combined. And so it's definitely, that's the hub. That's where we always are. And so it's probably, if I have to choose one or the other, I would say the kitchen is what matters to me. When the kitchen is crazy, then mama's crazy.
Right. Yes. And everyone listening, I hope that you are starting to picture where your spot is too. Mine is like yours, Chanel. It's my kitchen family room area where when I walk in, if it's clean, I feel pretty good. If it's crazy, I feel crazy. So decide what that home base is and recognize that when you have a little bit of time and effort to put into a certain spot, that home base is the place to invest it, because that's going to help you free up your energy, free up your mind, not feel so crazy. And it's just impossible to think that the whole house is going to be clean all the time. So if we kind of draw some boundaries around where it is that we're trying to keep organized and make it a realistic target, then that can help young moms a lot feel like, I know that maybe my bedroom's a little messy and I didn't get the bathroom picked up and the toilet room's messy, but the main area where I live, this home base, I'm keeping up on that. And that can feel really good because that's a realistic thing, especially if you have a new baby or toddlers that are kind of, wreaking havoc and pulling things out a lot. So home base is one concept that can help you. And I think one other concept I do just want to highlight is just the idea of boundaries. And how I want to use this principle is we literally could follow our kids around all day long, picking up after them, because clutter is distracting and overwhelming and chaotic, right? But that's not a good quality of life to have. There's not enough reward to follow around the kids and pick up all day long. So the way I like to introduce boundaries into this kind of a conversation is have boundaries around when you pick up and when you don't. Another way to look at this is have checkpoints during the day. And so if you can recognize, okay, home base is what I want to have picked up, and I'm going to pick it up after breakfast, maybe after the kids leave for elementary school or before I go to work, kind of whatever that looks like for you. And then depending on how messy things get, how many kids are still at home. When I had young kids at home, breakfast was what time we did it. I did it again at lunchtime. We'd pick up lunch, pick up home base, put the baby down to bed, and then I'd have a fairly clean home. But guess what? By dinner, it was a wreck again. So we'd have another home base cleanup after dinner or right before bed. And what it did was, even though the clutter would start to build up a little bit, my mind was not feeling really stressed out about it because it knew that there was a plan in place that would kick into action. So a little bit of clutter along through the day wasn't a problem because there was already a solution, and it was that next checkpoint that I had installed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's something that I have implemented that has made a really big difference for me because, in your first tip, you mentioned like recognize what your level of, what you can handle basically in a messy home and, how organized, how messy, whatever. And for me, I found my kids they don't care and they like to just kind of throw things around as they go. And what I found is that my level is a lot higher, is a lot neater than their level. And I bet that's true across the board. Most kids are not super neat and don't care. But when I know that there are certain times in the day that we're going to pick up, that latest creation that they're making, then it takes the pressure off and I'm able to let them create. I'm able to let them make messes, let them be kids because I know what's coming.
Right. And that's so healthy and so important because then you're getting what you need as a mom and as a home manager, and they're getting what they need, which is some creativity and free space. But what's so beautiful is it's that structure that's in place that allows both of those things to happen. And so if you feel like you struggle in this area, or really kind of any area in your life with getting organized or feeling like you have control, looking at how can I set up some structure, some routine, so that I can relax and feel a little more free to live life and still know that what needs to be taken care of will get taken care of.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. And let's go a little bit deeper there. So this is one kind of routine that we can set up. What are some other routines that we can set up that are going to help things, once we've kind of got it organized the way that we want it to go, how do we help it stay organized?
These are great questions. All right. So everyone listening, you'll need to go to my website and check out boot camp because I'm just pulling back the curtains on what we do in boot camp. All the questions you're asking, these are exactly the strategies that I teach. And so after I teach the concept of home base, there's a couple other really strategic ones. It's so interesting. The place that I start with women always is close the day. It's a close the day routine because I've noticed if we don't close the day on the right foot, we're opening it and it's on a bad foot. I look at clutter from yesterday as almost like debt the next day, that I have to kind of pay off that debt from the day before I can really get started in my new day. And so part of closing the day that I teach in boot camp is determine home base and get it cleaned up before you go to bed. And then a little bit of self-care that's really important. And part of that also is taking a look at your calendar for the next day and making sure that you're aware of appointments, generating a very small to-do list. And I go more into detail in boot camp about that. But doing those things allows you to wake up with purpose, with priorities, with clarity. And it's so empowering what that one little routine can do for you. I have similar routines that I teach that are for opening the day, a really strong way to open your day, and then a morning routine, which helps you address home base. And I won't get into the details here. I know it sounds like a lot of routines, but I kind of string them together like beads on a necklace, where it's very methodical. We answer a lot of questions, and it's just something where you have someone kind of holding your hand and helping you to implement those. But I think I'll just come back to when you're looking at wanting to make it easy and consistent to stay organized, the real power is working with your brain and the way your brain wants to work. And your brain wants everything to be easy and predictable and consistent. And so if you want your results to be organized and, free of clutter, and you're able to act and be productive, then it's simply a matter of setting up some of those routines, some of that structure, so that your brain can adopt those. And soon it becomes not a big deal. I mean, everyone's experienced something that seemed difficult at one point, but by doing it repeatedly, it becomes an easy task. I like to point out when you first learned how to drive a car, Chanel, can you remember when your dad first took you out and taught you how to back out of the driveway or pull into a parking lot? Wasn't it terrifying?
Yeah, I remember him saying something along the lines of, you're a new driver, so if you sneeze, you're going to end up in the other lane.
Oh, dear.
That basically there's so much, right? There's so much you have to think of when you're a new driver.
Right. So as we've got new information coming in, it can feel overwhelming. But the reality is that task hasn't changed for you in the last 20, 30 years, however long it's been since you started driving, it's still essentially the same task. But your brain's just learned to automate those steps, and it's become simple and easy. And it's exactly the same thing with these routines is as we learn how to implement them, it's a little bit deliberate at first as you're reminding yourself to do some of these things, but we break them down and keep them really simple, really beginner so that they're not overwhelming. And then over time, you find yourself doing those things naturally, and it feels just as easy as what you were doing before. I had one of the ladies in one of my programs reached out the other day and just said I had my sister want to drop by. And prior to these programs, I would have panicked because the house was crazy messy and I just wouldn't have been prepared. But the crazy thing is, I was able to say, yeah, sure, come on over right now, because she had done those basics that we talked about. But the most important part of that is I said, do you feel like it's a lot of more effort for you? And she said that is the crazy part, is that I feel like I'm living exactly the way that I did before. It's just I now have these routines and these habits that puts everything on autopilot. So you're just enjoying these really wonderful results without having to work so hard. And that's where the psychology behind the organizing really comes in.
Yeah. So it sounds like something we talk about a lot is habit formation. And it sounds like that's really, you're creating routines, you're creating habits so that it's just not a big deal. So you just do it every day, same way, same place, same time. And the things that you want to get done automatically.
Right. And let me share, since you brought up the word habit, and we have been talking about that, one of my very favorite organizing tools, again, I teach this in boot camp, but I almost can't speak about organizing anytime without talking about this term, because it's such a great one, such a great tool. It's called habit hooking. Chanel, you've followed me for a while. Have you heard me talk about habit hooks?
I have.
Should I put you on the spot? Do you want to?
No. We want to hear it from the source. We want to hear you explain this.
All right. Well, I'm sure you could do a beautiful job, but since I love to talk about it, I will indulge in describing a habit hook. All right. This is such a great tool, and this is a good takeaway for anyone today that just even wants to up level just a little bit from where you're at. If you're wanting to do something new, and this can be, the dishes, it can be maybe spending some time with your kids. It could be exercising. It could be reading something inspirational, like whatever it is that you want to do that's new in your life. The best way to do it is to create a habit hook by looking at and assessing what's something you're doing on a regular basis already. And you guys all have so many things you regularly do. I'm sure you all regularly at least eat breakfast. You might take a shower. You all wake up in the morning. I mean, we're looking for like really basic things, right? So how can you use an existing habit and hook your new habit into it? So for example, if you're really wanting to exercise, one habit hook you can use is when you wake up, you automatically put on your exercise clothes and you do 20 minutes of exercise or whatever works for you. So you're hooking that new habit into the old one. And what happens is the brain is really excited to automate things and make things be easy. And so it just begins to translate the waking up into I now exercise. And I know that might sound simplified and there's some maybe steps in between that. But the concept of a habit hook is really empowering. And I'll share a couple more. I was just speaking to a group last night and we were talking about organizing a space like a pantry and how we're able to keep that good work up. And the habit hook for that is every time you go grocery shopping, you clean out your pantry. You don't pull everything out, but if there's some empty boxes or some things that are misplaced, you use that as a cue to just restore order to your pantry. It takes 1 or 2 minutes once you've organized your pantry, and then you always have a pantry that's functioning. So a habit hook is a really incredible tool for creating some change in your life.
Yeah. Okay. And it's so powerful in so many different areas. So I'm so glad we got into that, because even if people listening are like, okay, I'm pretty organized. Yeah, I'm good. It goes well beyond organizing. Mm-hmm. There are so many applications there, because habit formation, I could go on about that all day, but we want to create habits. That's what makes our life easy and simple and gets us doing the things that we want to do. Mm-hmm. In the little bit of time we have left, I would just love to hear, you've been doing this for quite a while. What are some of the most important things that you've learned about decluttering as you've really, dove into this?
That's a great question. I think understanding the nature of clutter really helps you be able to let go of things. So the group I was talking to last night, quite a few of them were struggling with being able to let go of things. So I'm going to guess it's about a third of everyone that I talk to struggles with letting go. And there's another third that gets a real high off of getting rid of things. And then there's a third that's kind of right in the middle. So one of the conversations that we had last night that was really helpful was just talking about the idea that waste is inevitable. And when you buy something that you paid good money for, or when you have that idea of that I might need it again, so it's hard to get rid of it. If we don't get rid of things, we are just reorganizing clutter. And today, in today's world where Amazon Prime can have everything to your doorstep literally within about 24 hours, it is so easy to accumulate stuff. We have to have a really honest conversation with ourselves about what is clutter and how we can get rid of it. And again, just coming back to that idea of, is it just because I paid good money for it? Is it bringing me value? And recognizing that waste is just a natural part of life. You know, you make dinner, you have potato peels and fat from meat and boxes from pasta that you throw away. You know, it's just a part of the way we live. You build a home, you're going to have scraps of wood and carpet and little remnants of paint. Like, you don't ever use everything all the way. And so for anyone out there who struggles with getting rid of things or feels like that's a hard challenge to go through clutter and determine, you know, what to keep and what to get rid of, I would just say maybe take a deeper look and ask yourself, of course, there's kind of the Marie Kondo, does it spark joy? You know, do I love it? Do I use it? And those are really good questions to ask yourself, but take a little deeper look and remind yourself that sometimes we make bad purchases. Sometimes we get rid of things that we end up using down the road. But what we're doing is we end up clearing a lot of space for things that we really want to have in our lives. And if that costs us maybe letting go of something that a few weeks later we remembered that we had and would use, but now we have all of this open space and feel so good in our space, then it's probably worth letting go. So as it comes to clutter, maybe set a little timer for yourself. One of the boot camp principles I teach is just take 10. Just take 10 minutes and get through a space. Don't overthink it. Don't try to be too much of a perfectionist. Just keep moving through it. If you get stuck, set something aside if you can't decide whether to let go of it or not. But just keep moving through it. Get through as much of it as you can in that 10 minutes, and then have that real conversation with yourself about, is it really bringing me value? Do I feel excited when it's here? I knew we always end up buying clothes or toys or things that really don't work out the way we hoped they would. So can I pass this along and be okay with letting it go? So hopefully that helps as people are looking at really fighting that clutter.
Yeah, totally. I feel like this is one of the reasons why I like your work so much is you take something that can be scary or overwhelming and you break it down to like, okay, yeah, 10 minutes. I can do that. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, create a little habit. It's just very doable. And I think that it can be really refreshing for people who feel like this is a big task. So for people who want to get more from you, where should they go?
So if they go to thehappygal.com, they can access old blog posts. I think as part of this show, we're offering my top 10 tips for an organized life. So you can find me there. And I will say too, if you do want to join boot camp, if you go to jennylayton.com, I know that's two separate websites, but jennylayton.com is where you'll find boot camp. You can learn more about boot camp since we talked quite a bit about that. So thehappygal.com and jennylayton.com.
Perfect. And I will link to that free download that will be in the show notes if you guys want to go and get that and check that out. And Jenny, to finish off, we always ask, what is one little thing that you hope people will take action on after hearing this conversation today?
Well, I think the easiest action step is going to be to create a habit hook for something you want to create in your life. So if clutter's a hot button for you, then maybe a habit hook to go through a certain space in your home every day for 10 minutes right after breakfast or right after lunch or right when you get home from work. If you are wanting to do some personal care, if that is maybe enriching your mind with some reading or some exercise, create a habit hook for that. If you are wanting to spend more time as a family or connect with a certain child every day, create a habit hook for that. I just think those small, specific little changes are really what creates success over time, and habit hooks are a great vehicle to help you do that.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that's a great place to start, you guys, whether it's in organization or in something else that you want to do. So, Jenny, thank you so much for being with us and teaching us today.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Moms Who Know. That was such a great episode with Jenny Layton. I loved learning from her. Like I said, I have learned from her for a long time and just feel like she adds so much value to the conversation. So, the one little thing that I am taking from this conversation, my favorite part, is where she said, we all have different levels of tolerance of clutter in our home and to be okay with that. And I think that's really something that stood out to me because I am okay with a little bit of clutter. I love a clean house, but it stresses me out to try to worry about having it perfect and to recognize that and to let it be okay and to know there's going to be times when we clean it up and times when we just live with it. And so I think that's a great takeaway for me, but I want to know what your takeaway is. What one little thing are you going to do differently or even just think about differently because of this conversation? Let me know on Instagram or Facebook at Moms Who Know Podcast, or share your insight with a friend. And while you're at it, be sure to share the show. I love it when you guys do that. Thank you so much for being here and for being a part of Moms Who Know. I appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.